Hello and welcome to another Giant Slayer TFT How to Play video. Today our analysts will be diving into how to play mages for patch 11.6. Throughout set 4.5, mages have become a staple composition thanks to the carry potential of Aurelion Sol. As of patch 11.6, it is one of the most flexible compositions with multiple variations. We'll be breaking down the core items, champions, and traits for mages while also delving into a few of the possible variations. With all that said, let's go ahead and get started. But before we begin, please don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come, so be sure to also follow our Giant Slayer TFT social media pages. Alright, let's get back to the video. To begin with, let's go over the core items when playing mages. At this point, everyone should know that the key to playing mages is having Aurelion Sol on board. Aurelion is the main damage dealer, which means he's the champion you'll be focused on giving items to. There are other carry options such as Veigar, Brand, and in some cases Twisted Fate, but those tend to be relatively niche variations of mage. So when we're talking about who to prioritize items for, it's definitely Aurelion Sol since he's the main carry. Before we list exactly which items you want for Aurelion Sol, it should be noted that committing to making these items in the early game will limit your options later on. This is because there's limited options to using AP items compared to physical damage items. Inherently, there isn't too much of an issue because forcing mages isn't too difficult, plus pivoting into different compositions is possible. This is more or less to caution anyone that likes to have a flexible mid-game, as slamming early AP items can limit what choices you have. Alright, with that said, let's get back to Aurelion Sol items. At the top of the list we have Jeweled Gauntlet, as it is by far the best AP item for him when it comes to maximizing his damage output. Since he generally hits multiple units per cast and does more damage on the second cast to units he's already hit, giving him spell crit is huge. One lucky critical can basically wipe out an enemy board. Other items you can look for are Death Cap, Giant Slayer, and Hand of Justice. All of these are alright secondary options for damage if you're unable to get a Jeweled Gauntlet. On the defensive side of items, Guardian Angel is by far the best option. This helps Aurelion Sol cast more than once in a fight and opens up different ways that you can position him, such as in the front line. And the third most common item for Aurelion is Hextech Gunblade. This can be an optional item if you already have a Hand of Justice or if you'll be running Siphoner, but most of the time it's essential as he can fully heal each time he casts. It will boost his survivability, especially when paired with Guardian Angel. Outside of items for Aurelion, there's really not any specific champion that you need to have items for. Chalice is always a worthwhile investment since it also increases the damage of Aurelion. Look to give Chalice to either Lulu or Veigar. Basically, Chalice and frontline items are good to grab. Items like Sunfire Cape, Dragon's Claw, Bramble Vest, and Titan's Resolve are perfect for frontline Annie or vanguards like Sejuani or Aatrox. And the last item to talk about in regards to mages is a Mage Spatula. If you're able to procure a spatula, it's going to help a lot in hitting 5 or 7 mages. As to who to give it to, well, anyone with good crowd control can use it well, but two specific champions to give it to are Shyvana and Swain. Both of them benefit from the second cast as it will increase the health they gain from transforming. That's going to be it for mages. Let's now move on to core champions and traits for mages. There's two important aspects when playing mages, which are quite obvious. First is you need the mage trait, whether that's 3, 5, or 7. Second, of course, is Aurelion Sol. As long as you have Aurelion with at least 3 mage, then you're basically set and can fill the rest of your board with anything you want. But there are plenty of variations that you can lean into. One of the more common variations is Elderwood, which uses Lulu and Veigar as the other 2 mages alongside of Aurelion. The rest of the Elderwoods are usually Maokai, Nunu, and Ornn, with either a chosen Elderwood to hit 6 or an Elderwood spatula item for Aurelion. In addition to 6 Elderwood, you should be able to fit in 5 mage at level 8. Another variation focuses more on a solid frontline by using Annie as one of the 3 mages alongside Vanguard champions like Sejuani, Aatrox, and Ornn. The benefit of running this variation is the amount of crowd control you have with your frontline. It's also easy to run the 7 mage variation in this case, where you can skimp out a bit on your frontline to instead focus on a damage bonus from the mage trait. There's plenty of other variations that we can cover, but the last one to talk about is Dragon Soul. This doesn't always use Aurelion as the main carry, meaning that you won't be running mage. That said, it is still playable with mage, as fitting in a 3rd mage with 6 Dragon Soul is actually quite easy. Overall, the main issue with running this composition is a weak front line, so you really need to find Swain if you're aiming to play Aurelion as the main carry for 6 Dragon Soul. Overall, the core champions to look for when playing mage are Aurelion, Lulu, and Annie. From there, you can really play any variation you want as long as you have a solid front line. Before we move on, one last bit to talk about for champions and traits, which is chosens to look for. In general, the best option is to either go for Mage or Dragon Soul chosen Aurelion, since that instantly makes him a 2-star champion. That's not easy to do consistently, so instead look for Annie, Lulu, or Vigar as a chosen mage, since it makes hitting 5 mages much easier. Other than that, an Elderwood chosen is great if you're playing for that variation. Sejuani or Aatrox also do well as chosen vanguards to bolster your frontline. All in all, there's plenty of chosen options when playing mage, which is one of the main reasons as to why it's so flexible in the meta. With items, champions, and traits covered, let's move into a brief overview of each stage of the game, beginning with the early game. The early game is a lot more involved for Mage than it is for a lot of other compositions because of how early the trait can get going. Both Twisted Fate and Brand are excellent early game carries that hold onto Aurelion Sol items quite well. Keeping in mind that running early mages doesn't mean you have to play mages later on, but it can make the transition into those builds much smoother. Besides Twisted Fate and Brand, there's several other early game champions that can hold on to mage items. Nidalee, despite the nerf, still does well enough during stage 2 and does a lot of damage if you have a Jeweled Gauntlet or Hand of Justice. Tristana can do well with those items as well. There's not many 2-cost options for mage item holders, but having an early Annie for Fortune or Lulu for Mage Elderwood are solid choices. As for 3-cost champions, you have several options. Vigar is the most obvious since he's a mage, and can also end up running him as the main carry if you're able to 2-star him early enough. Kennen can use some of the AP items as well and is amazing with Guardian Angel. Katarina and Akali are also solid choices for AP items, and lastly, Kindred is one of the best 3-costs in the early to mid game. Overall, there's a lot of ways that you can play the early game to help you get into the mid game, or your goal is to find Aurelion Sol. At the end of the day though, the plan should be to play your strongest board while hitting standard leveling intervals. Those timings are level 4 on either 2-1 or 2-2, and level 5 by 2-5. Leveling to 5 is especially important as you open up the door to possibly high rolling an early Aurelion Sol. Let's now move on to the mid game. Mid game will begin when you level to 6. The standard timing is 3-2, but you can delay that by a round or two if you're close to 50 gold and have the health to wait. Otherwise, you want to level to 6 and can assess whether or not you need to roll. Basically, if your board wasn't winning a lot in stage 2, you likely need to sell your early game chosen and roll to stabilize your board. Look for a solid 2 or 3 cost chosen, in particular any that you can use AP items well. Besides finding a new chosen, also look to upgrade your existing board as much as you can. And of course, if you do find an Aurelion Sol, you can immediately play him, as even at level 1 he's quite strong as long as you have the mage trait for him, as well as 1 or 2 items. Whether you rolled or not, the next important timing is level 7 on 4-1 after Wolves. The plan here is similar to level 6, as you'll look to roll for a new chosen if your current one isn't doing well, while trying to find at least 1 Aurelion Sol. But this is where you will also form your mid-game composition, which can either be Elderwood Mage, 7 Mage, Vanguard Mage, or any variation of those builds. The number one thing to keep in mind is you need a carry that uses your items. Ideally, you'll be able to find Aurelion Sol, but there's plenty of 3-cost champions that you can use as item holders. Besides your carry, the other important piece of your board will be your frontline. Annie should be easy enough to 2-star, so having her is great. Plus, any additional frontline units you find, such as Vanguards or Elderwoods. It's also important to be scouting often during Stage 4, as you need to keep tabs on who else is contesting Aurelion Sol. Keep in mind that you can skate by with a 1-star Aurelion Sol, so it's not the end of the world if you're being contested, but knowing how difficult it will be to 2-star him is important. And if it looks like too many players are contesting him, you can always pivot towards a different build. Other builds that you can look to play using AP items are Vanguard Mystic Fabled with Nico as the carry, Vigar as the main carry for Elderwood Mage, or an Enlightened Siphoner comp where you can use Morgana as the main carry instead of Talon. And of course, you can also transfer items to a 5-cost unit if you find them, specifically Swain, though Yone can be an okay choice as well. With most of the mid game covered, let's move into the late game. Level 8 is usually the beginning point of the late game, which can be anywhere between 4-5 and 5-2. The later you level, the more likely that you'll lose out on key champions, but it really depends on how your level 7 and stage 4 went. The plan at level 8 is to find Aurelion Sol 2 and to finish up building whichever composition variation you're playing. This will mostly be your main economic goal when it comes to the late game, as level 9 is rare for most games. That said, if you had a good stage 4, hit Aurelion Sol easily, and your board is doing well, you can definitely save for level 9 and add in 5-cost units like Swain and Ornn. Overall, the late game revolves more around positioning and scouting than anything else. Scouting should be an easy part, as you should be looking for any obvious threats like Aatrox, Zephyr, and Shroud. And knowing what 5-cost champions others are hitting is important information as well. Positioning, on the other hand, is difficult to teach because each game is so different. Generally speaking, the best way to position Aurelion is to maximize the damage that he'll do. Since he always targets the furthest away champion, you want to make sure you're having him in a position to do the most damage by manipulating that aspect. Also, make sure you're moving him if other players are trying to bait the units in corners, such as Azir Sand Guardians or a target dummy. One other positioning tip to keep in mind is that you can frontline Aurelion Sol as long as you're not putting him into direct danger against high damage targets like Olaf or Kayle. And of course, be careful about frontlining Aurelion against Lee Sin, as you don't want him to get kicked off the board. The benefit of using Aurelion in the front line is that he'll cast faster than being in the back line and has a better chance of doing damage to multiple champions. Overall, if you're unsure about how to position, watching streams is a great way to learn. As Aurelion Sol with Mage is one of the most popular compositions, it really shouldn't be too difficult to find high-ranked players that are playing those builds. Actively watch how they position and try to emulate that in your games. That is going to be it for today's video, folks. It's great to see Mage doing so well in set 4.5 after how poorly it did in the original set 4. Aurelion Sol has proven to be a much healthier addition to the game than Ahri was, so props to the TFT team for making that change. Let us know in the comment section below if there are any compositions you'd like us to cover in future How to Play videos. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.